if you don't learn how to regulate your nervous system, how to actually feel the fears that are coming up and repattern the behaviors from there, it's going to be so challenging to just act as if, because that's putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound that you actually get to heal from the inside out. We're back, baby, with a brand new season of the It's Fucking Spiritual podcast. Join us each week as we have unfiltered conversations about how to transform your life. Our mission is to usher in a new era of spirituality where you don't have to be all love and light to live a life of alignment. Here, we honor all of it, the profound and the profane, the magic and the messy, and all things that make you human. So let's discuss the truth behind transformation and be unapologetic in our evolution. From manifestation to money, embodiment to energy, and all taboo topics, nothing is going to be off limits. Are you ready to live a life that feels just as good as it looks? Let's get fucking spiritual. Hey, what's up, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of the It's Fucking Spiritual podcast. Today, we are back with a solo episode, and we are going to talk about something that was very challenging for me when I was in the manifestation space, learning all the manifestation tools, tips, tricks, principles, and something that I brought up with my students in Expand, my group program, and they all seemed to agree. So I wanted to bring it on here for you. And I hope that maybe it validates a little bit of the experience or questions that you might have, maybe if this was a similar experience for you. And that is what manifestation teachings get wrong. So if you have ever felt like you're listening to the podcasts, you're in the manifestation spaces, you are following all the people, you're doing the vision boards, you've tried affirmations, you've tried journaling, you're very self-aware, you know your patterns, you know your limiting beliefs, and yet you're like, why have I manifested some things but not others? Why is it that I feel like I'm taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back? Why does it feel like these manifestation tools, tips, tricks work for everybody else but me? If this resonates with you, if you feel like, you've tried a lot of the things, you're aware of what to do, you're very self-aware and you're aware of your stories, and yet you feel like you can't really manifest the really big things that you want. So maybe you manifest some of the smaller things, maybe you've even manifested some of the bigger things, but for whatever reason, it just feels like not every single thing is coming through, and that there feels like there's a block, or it feels like you are still in self-sabotaging patterns or habits or procrastination or perfectionism. You really want to start your business, but you can't seem to actually do the thing. Or maybe you've started it and you can't manifest the big months like you're seeing everybody else have. Or maybe you are finding challenges in relationships. Whatever that is for you, if this resonates with you, there is something that I personally uncovered on my journey that I want to share here with you, because as I shared it with my students, I found that they felt extremely validated in learning this. And here's the thing. Manifestation teachings aren't necessarily wrong, but they leave out about 50% of the puzzle. So if you hear that you're supposed to reprogram your subconscious mind, go into hypnosis, reprogram your beliefs and change your identity, and then you just show up and you act as if, your future self, you act as if your higher self, and then that's it. And then you're supposed to become her, right? And that's true. And that's all well and good. However, people that actually teach that and only that, it lacks a foundation, and it lacks a understanding of big T or little t trauma. It lacks teaching from an embodied standpoint when it comes to the nervous system and being in a regulated state. So here's the thing. You can try to reprogram your subconscious mind all day long. You can do the hypnosises, you can journal, you can future script your life, which is what typical manifestation teachings teach. And you can do that. And it's a great place to start, right? Like we really want to be self-aware. We want to understand what our limiting beliefs even are. We want to have a vision for our life. And all of those things are great. And if you find that you're still in the same self-sabotaging patterns, what can often happen is that when you become really self-aware and you know the manifestation practices to do and you've tried them, right? Or you've tried the journaling or you've tried doing mirror affirmations and it's not fully working for you, it can almost be more frustrating than before you began the process. Because when you're blissfully, unaware, right, in your life, then it's like, you have challenges or you feel stuck or you feel stagnant. And then you wake up to this self-development world. You wake up to the fact that you create your own reality, that you're 100% responsible for your life. And it's like, oh my gosh, wow, there's this whole world out there. And there's this spark that is ignited of hope. And oh my gosh, I can change my life. And you start following the people, you start taking the courses, you start doing the things, you start listening to the podcasts like this one. And people make it sound so easy. It's like, yeah, you just tap into the future version of you. Would she think? How would she act? How would she walk? What would she wear? How would she speak? And then you practice being her. And again, this is true. However, what that doesn't take into account is your body, your nervous system, and the habitual patterning that you're naturally going to fall into if you live in a chronically dysregulated state. So, what does that mean for you? It's really good news, actually, because it means that it's not true that the manifestation teachings work for other people and not for you. It's not true that you're destined to spin on your hamster wheel. It's not true that it's not possible. It's just that you only have 50% of the puzzle. And typical manifestation teachings are teaching subconscious reprogramming from, do the meditations, do the hypnosis. Yes, it's transformational. It can be really amazing. Like I love to meditate. I love to do hypnosis, visualizations. But it's working from a top-down approach, meaning it's working from the mind to the body. So it's saying, let's go into the mind, let's go into the limiting beliefs, let's rewrite the limiting beliefs, and then you'll start to embody and become the next version of yourself. But the problem is, if we've lived in a chronically dysregulated state, your body is habitually carrying out patterns, regardless of how many affirmations that you do. If this episode is resonating with you, I invite you to join me for my free 3-day nervous system regulation workshop this upcoming June 25th to 27th. And I'm going to be teaching all about how to regulate your nervous system, giving you 3 different practices that you can use every single day to bring yourself down into a regulated state so that you can feel more regulated, more free, alive, grounded, and connected in your life. Because for me, I really found that this was the missing link for actually creating what I wanted in my life and being able to feel it, to be able to hold it, and to be able to trust myself enough to create it. And I really, really want this for you and for everyone, is to live a more grounded and regulated life. So come join us for the free 3-day workshop. You can find it in the show notes, and I will see you there. So the nervous system is the electrical system of the body. And it is the part of you that is, if you've heard the terms fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, these are how our body respond to stressors in our lives. And what ends up happening when we are a little kid, when we're born, right? You're born whole, perfect, complete, worthy. Look at a baby, right? A baby just expresses what they want to express. When they want to cry, they cry. When they want to scream, they scream. When they, laugh or giggle, they're creative, as much as a baby can be creative, right? But they play, they have an amazing imagination. And then somewhere along the way, most of us become some form of wounded. right? We have a big T trauma, a little T trauma, right? Big trauma. Some people think that they don't have trauma. I think most people on the planet have trauma, but it might not be overt trauma. It might not be something where you're like, oh my gosh, this really traumatizing thing happened to me when I was 4 or 5 years old. Sometimes trauma is insidious, and trauma is just as much what didn't happen as what did happen. So little T traumas over time that compound over time can look like not getting your emotional needs met, not being validated, not being allowed to actually express the truth of who you are. So you learn over time not to trust yourself. You learn over time not to express yourself in a certain way. You learn that you have to be a good girl archetype, or you learn, insert whatever you learned, right? In order to adapt, in order to stay safe and get love as a child. And so somewhere along the way, that child becomes a little more repressed in their expression. And this happens to, I'd say, most of us, right? We learn a habitual way of being, and we also learn certain nervous system patternings. So for somebody that learned as a child they always had to be the caretaker, or they always had to appease their parent, maybe they go into fawn, which means they freeze and then they just collapse and they people please and they are the good girl archetype, or they don't honor their needs, they don't honor their boundaries, and then they carry that with them to adulthood. Or maybe as a child, you really learned that you had to fend for yourself and you had to take care of yourself. And so you learned how to habitually go into fight. So you're constantly looking for threats, and you're constantly perceiving in your relationships that somebody's out to get you, or somebody doesn't have good intentions, or you're constantly in a fight state and your nervous system is tense. Or maybe you learned that you needed to fight to take care of yourself. So you're constantly, chronically overworking and stressing and pushing and hustling. That's a nervous system state. Or maybe you learned that you didn't want to upset your parents. So therefore you had to run, you had to get out of the room, you had to push it away. Maybe you become avoidant. And so you are used to going into flight when things get hard. Basically, when we're a child, we learn certain adaptations that keep us safe, and that creates a habitual nervous system pattern. And we're all going through different nervous system patterns throughout our day, we all have all of the patterns, right? But we typically have patterns that we will fall into naturally when we are feeling some source of stress or threat or fear, even if it's not conscious or even if it's not based in true reality. So that is why, as a child, if you learned it wasn't safe to be seen, then as an adult, you vision board as much as possible. You write your affirmations, you write yourself a $10,000 check and say, I'm going to make $10,000 months or $100,000 months or whatever that is, right? But yet you learned it as a child. It's not safe to be seen. You learn that you need to people please, that your voice can't really be heard. And you learn not to trust you learn not to trust your actual expression. And so therefore it's patterned in your nervous system to freeze, to fawn, to procrastinate, right? The adaptation comes out that, oh, I really want this thing. I really want to start a business. I really want to start my social media account. I really want to start a podcast. But yet it's patterned in your inner child that that's not actually safe to have. So no amount of affirming, journaling about it, being aware about your patterns and stories, and even acting as if will work, because the second that you end up getting triggered, right? So even if you put yourself out there, I'm just going to stay with this example, okay? Even if you put yourself out there and you're like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to act as if I'm going to be my highest self. My highest self is saying that I'm going to start this business. I'm going to put myself out there online, and you start sharing your story, right? Maybe you even start taking on a few clients. And then inevitably, because business can bring challenges and, things can be confronting, something happens where Someone messages you something rude for the first time. Someone from high school or college judges you, and that was like one of your biggest fears, right? That's going to activate that fight, flight, freeze, fawn response in your nervous system. It's going to activate your inner child that's still wounded by no fault of your own. And then you're going to go into the natural nervous system habitual state. And so then you're like, what the heck? I did the things I'm affirming. I even got 2 steps forward. Now I feel like I'm 10 steps back. Why can everybody else do it but me? And then the stories start to replay again. So that's just one example. But that is why typical manifestation teachings only show you half of the puzzle. So they're only telling you, have your vision, decide what you want, decide why you want it, then take action, let go of the how it's going to happen, and just release and surrender. And yes, we need to do all of those things. And if we don't tend to the state of our nervous system, if we don't learn how to work with the inner child parts of ourselves that are still operating from a wound, if we don't learn how to look at the parts of us that protect us, whether that's our procrastination part, our inner critic part, the part of us who is a perfectionist, the part of us that wants to control everything. If we don't look at those parts, work with those parts, and begin to actually expand our capacity in our body to feel, and we're not going to get on how to do that completely on this episode, but just to give you context, if you don't learn how to regulate your nervous system, how to actually feel the fears that are coming up and repattern the behaviors from there, it's going to be so challenging to just act as if, because that's putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound that you actually get to heal from the inside out. If you feel deeply connected to this episode, if you are ready to step into the expanded version of you, if you are ready to learn how to reparent your inner child and repattern the ways that you show up in the world, I'm so excited to officially announce and invite you to my upcoming in-person retreat in Austin, Texas, in August 22nd to 26th. There are 2 different style tickets with 2 very different price points. So I really tried to cater to everyone to make it accessible for you to come. Check it out in the show notes. We have a VIP that comes, stays in the house, has all meals included. We're all staying together. And then there's also an immersion style where you come to the location every single day. And I cannot wait to be in person with all of you, to get to heal together. There's so much that you can do and collapse time when you are held in sisterhood for 3 to 4 days and allow yourself the space and time to really go into your inner wounding, go into your blocks, go into the things that are holding you back and learn to actually somatically repattern them in your nervous system. That is what we are going to be doing at this retreat, so that you can plug back into the true you of who you really are and leave as the expanded woman that you know that you were meant to be. And it's called the Expanded Women Retreat. I didn't say that. But anyway, if you are feeling called to join us, tickets officially went live. So go check that out in the show notes. And hopefully I will get to meet you and give you a huge hug in August. And so instead of just having this top-down approach, right? Starting in the mind and then into the body, we have to start from the body and then repattern our beliefs. So start at looking at the nervous system habitual patterns and states that are coming up for you. I'm sure you can see, even if you're listening to this right now, asking yourself, what is something that I desire and what is getting in the way of that desire? What is my typical pattern? And I'm sure you're probably aware of it, whether that's in being seen, whether that's in relationships, right? I always go into fight in relationships, even though I consciously know that I don't want to mess this up, right? I consciously know that I don't have anything to actually fight about, but I find myself constantly expecting the worst. If you go into a nervous system of fight, What are your patterns? What are those habitual states? And just start becoming aware of those. Because once you become aware, the next step is to begin to create safety in your body so that you're creating a separation between the time of your reaction, the time of the habitual state getting activated, creating space through getting into the body, through breath, through doing a body scan, through regulating your nervous system, creating space between your reaction and your response, and becoming the observer of the ways this actually shows up in your life. I used to do all of the things. I used to check all of the boxes. I used to know all of the manifestation teachings and techniques and practiced a lot of them. And I always found it really challenging because I felt like I would manifest the things and then I would drop it. And then I would try really hard and I would do the stuff and then it would just be challenging again. And I felt like I was on this roller coaster. And it was because I wasn't actually learning to feel my emotions. I was operating from a chronically stressed, chronically fight or flight, dysregulated state. And I was doing the stuff that I was taught to do, and yet it wasn't making me feel any better. And that's what actually ignited me to go on this path of nervous system regulation, somatic embodiment. I have a program called Expand, teaching you somatic embodiment tools. We're going to be running another round starting in July, so you can get on the wait list for that. And I'm going to be hosting a 3-day workshop called Regulate, all on nervous system regulation and how to begin to regulate your nervous system for yourself so that you have these tools in your everyday toolbox to not just be operating from journaling or affirmations or doing the things, but actually learning how to become an embodied woman, how to ground yourself, how to be rooted in yourself. And what comes from that on the other side is so much self-trust. Because when you trust yourself to feel any emotion, when you trust yourself that you can bring yourself back into a regulated state, when you trust that you can handle it because you've got your inner child, she begins to trust you again. You start to come back into wholeness. There's nothing that you can't do. There's nothing that you can't manifest. There's nothing that you can't create. But you can't keep spinning your wheels on doing the manifestation teachings if you're not also learning how to become embodied, how to somatically process your emotions, and how to regulate your nervous system. So I hope that this episode feels validating for you. If you feel like you've been on a manifestation hamster wheel, if you feel like you've done the vision board and only it's partly come true, but so much of it also feels really out of reach and it feels challenging and you're starting to get down on yourself and you're wondering if it's even going to work for you. I promise it's possible. And I know that it's possible because I know the transformation that I've had in myself from being somebody who was chronically a hot mess, chronically frazzled, really had changed her life so much from self-development and from manifestation teachings, and who also discovered that it was only 50% of the puzzle. Because at the end of the day, what I'm a stand for myself and for you, is to live a life that feels just as good as it looks. To not just have the stuff on your vision board, but to actually feel alive, feel connected, feel purposeful, feel loving, feel trusting of yourself, trusting of your expression, trusting of who you are, trusting of who you're meant to be, trusting that you are enough. And for me, that's even a work in progress, honestly. I practice these tools and I teach these tools because I need these tools. But I also know the depth that it's given me in my life, the maturation that this has allowed me to step into, and living a more regulated state has just completely transformed my life in every area. And it's transformed my level of self-trust and my level of inner knowing and my level of understanding of the work. And I'm standing for you to have that too. So if this resonated with you, I invite you to join us for the 3-day nervous system regulation workshop, Regulate. And we did run this a couple of months ago, but if you joined us for the last round, it'll be similar but different because I'm going to be adding on to what we already talked about. And every time I teach live, it's always a little different because it's informed by what wants to come through that day. And yeah, you're going to receive 3 different practices for you to be able to practice throughout your day to help you get into a regulated state, give you some tools, some tips, some tricks to begin walking this journey for yourself and begin to really become and live a more regulated life so you can show up grounded and free and alive. So with that, I hope you feel very validated by this episode, that it's not you and you're not alone. And there's a whole world of possibility for you as you live a regulated life. So with that, I love you, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to the It's Fucking Spiritual podcast. I am so glad that you're here. And if this episode resonated with you, I invite you to share this with a friend that you feel needs to hear it. And if you are really feeling the love and support for this show, this podcast thrives off of your listens and your reviews. So I would love if you could leave us an honest review. We would love to hear your feedback, your thoughts, your questions, and it helps us get this podcast in the hands of more people and would mean so much to me to receive your support. So thank you.